If you are asking the question, who should I vote for president this year, I totally understand. This presidential election is really tough to decide on who to vote for. On the one side, we have President Trump, who is pitching the economy, law and order, relationships with foreign nations to bring peace, and minimizing the COVID-19 pandemic to open the economy. You have Vice President Biden, who is pitching a better and universal health care, a solution about racism and underprivileged, and protecting us from COVID-19 pandemic. I agree with both candidates. So now what? Hello everyone. Today's episode is about helping you select the best presidential candidate. This is not a voter's guide, but an understanding of the issues and prioritizing the issues to help select the best presidential candidate. This is not about Republican or Democrat or socialism versus capitalism, but a true understanding of the issues and how to weigh each issue based on a real objective and prioritized criteria, and not based on our feelings or emotions or some special interest. Not theoretical, but practical. Real-life Catholic advice from Practical Catholic.
Welcome to another episode of Practical Catholic with David Cease. Practical Catholic is a spiritual coaching show to help you find peace, love, and joy in family and work life. We are here each and every week to help you grow spiritually, to become successful in this life, and to be a saint for the life after.
My story begins when I was in the basic school, euphemistically called the TBS, just the first, it's like an acronym. One of the courses we had to take there was called Ethics of War. We had to study, how to be ethical and moral in war. This course was very vital because when you lead Marines, especially in combat where you're killing and wounding the enemy, there are a lot of what we call collateral damage. Collateral damage is basically innocent men, women, and children who are getting killed. And we had to study, what's our responsibility? How do we prevent that from happening? And, where's that fine line between, accidentally killing men, women, and children or creating a massacre? So one of the things that I was always fascinated with, and so I did a deeper dive, this was on my own, was a massacre that occurred in Vietnam. And it's a famous massacre. It's called the My Lai massacre in Vietnam. Roughly, they estimated anywhere from 360 to 550 innocent men, women, and children were killed in that incident by the U.S. Army. It is a fascinating, massacre. If you ever have time to study it, you should. So I went pretty much in depth. So let me just give you a little bit of background. So basically what had happened was the Army company, a company consists of, let's say, roughly around 400 to 500 soldiers, broken down into, 3 platoons, okay? And each platoon has roughly around 70 soldiers, So there's also a 4th platoon that might be like a heavy machine, heavy weapons kind of a platoon. So what has happened is 2 of the platoons went into a couple of the Vietnamese hamlets, and they went in, and supposedly the lieutenants heard that the captain had said, "Kill all people there," because they had been known to be what they call Viet Cong guerrillas. Viet Cong guerrillas were basically South Vietnamese civilians, basically. In the daytime, they would act like civilians, and they were all friendly. But at nighttime, they would go out and kill the American soldiers. So the platoon commander, especially I believe the first platoon commander, Casey, he wind up shooting innocent men, women, and children, or at least they weren't armed. And he ordered his soldiers to do so. And not only did he order them, he also showed them by him explicitly shooting these unarmed men, women, and then eventually the children. The killings occurred. A second platoon also did the killings as well. And it took the helicopter pilots that were landing them and pulling back injured people to actually stop this incident. It took the pilots to basically say, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And then eventually he reported it. and then he would go back to it, and he would pretty much put his body online. So it was pretty dramatic. This massacre occurred literally, in March 1968, and the new year of 1968 was the pivotal point of the Vietnam War, because this was the year that it was the Tet Offensive of 1968, and a lot of people had this downer about the war. It turned the attitude of the war. This massacre was just the icing on the cake to say this war is unwinnable, and what are we doing? Which would turn the tide for us to leave the Vietnam War and, in essence, lose the war, because it was a morale breaker. And so that's what happened. When the trial occurred, there was only one the first platoon commander, I believe his name was Lieutenant Casey, was the only one who was found guilty. But eventually, his 20, he didn't get, he got 22 years in prison, but that was reduced to basically 3 years in house arrest. And he was the only one that convicted. Yet many of the privates and the NCOs also did the killings and shootings. And we're talking about, innocent men, women, and children. And we're talking like children, infants. We're not talking about, older teen children. We're talking infants were shot at this point. And so all the soldiers kept saying, we were ordered to do this. The private was saying, the sergeant was telling me to do this. And the sergeant was saying, the lieutenant was telling me to do this. And then, and then the lieutenant finally said, the captain, told us to do this. And the captain basically said, they misinterpreted my orders. Okay. They found out that, a couple of the things that might have instigated this massacre was, one of them was, in the Vietnam War, they had this idea of body count. Now, the body count was an idea that the administration, which was the Kennedy as well as the Johnson administration, put out there, because they didn't know how to determine if we were winning the war or not, because there was really no land taking in the Vietnam War. We would defend a position and then we would give it back. So it was this back and forth. So the only way that they thought, they could determine whether we were winning the war was what they call a body count. How many bodies were being killed, right? And the reason why that caused a lot of confusion was because it started becoming a numbers game. It started becoming a game of how many of the enemy could we count. And so the higher the number, the better. So, you can see a lot of, just watch a lot of good war movies out there, Boys of Company C, Charlie Company. They talk about how ridiculous that they created these body counts, right? And they said that the reason why was because they were so worried about the body count that they didn't really even matter about whether they were enemy or not. And so they would be killing, men, women, and children, and they disguised it as, well, they could have been VC anyhow, because, that's what we did. So, but the problem is, in the war, in the ethics of war, there is, morality. And one of the things that we do, regardless of whether they are the enemy or not, is you never, ever, ever fire upon an unarmed person, okay? An unarmed person, okay? Unless there's clear and present danger that this unarmed person is going to jump and like go after a gun or anything like that. No one has the right to kill an unarmed person. And that's the basic thing. These people were killing unarmed, regardless of whether VC or not, unarmed people. And there were innocent children as well. Literally, I don't think an infant can pick up a gun, the last time I checked, right? So there was no hand grenades tied to these people. They were clearly innocent, okay? So they clearly made a bad moral decision to kill these innocent people. And what we find out, okay, we find out that, that without morality, units become chaotic. You should read the eyewitness testimony of the privates. They were just shooting innocent people like out of nowhere, and they didn't know what they were thinking. When you lose morality as a compass, the fighting becomes meaningless. What's this battle all about? When you lose a moral compass, we become savages. That's what we become. Total barbarians. They were barbarians and savages, killing innocent men, women, and children. And they lost, without moral compass, they lost the meaning and purpose of the war. Here we are supposed to be the great heroes to the Vietnam people and be almost like a savior to them, and yet we're killing them. We're killing their children. We're killing them, okay? So by no means am I saying that all the soldiers and Marines and sailors and airmen killed were like this. There was very few. But we do have to understand, even a platoon or a company-sized soldiers had such a huge impact in that war that it not only disgraced America, but we lost the war, and it was a huge factor in losing that war. If you look at society, and if we look at society that loses its morals, okay, you look at even communism, right? With Stalin, when he's killing and purging everyone. You have the German race that is killing Jewish people. That nation loses its identity. It loses the meaning of society. Okay, that's what it does. So we have to look at it as once a country loses it. Once a platoon in this case loses its moral compass, it is doomed to be destroyed. It's self-destructive, okay? And so that's what we learned. Many years later, a good friend of mine would say to me after I went through my conversion, because when I went in the Marine Corps, I was not a deep Catholic. In fact, I was more agnostic than anything else. And I thought I was a pretty good Marine. I would do anything, to protect my troops or my Marines, as well as win the war. I was so mission focused. I would have done anything to win the war, win the battle, win whatever it did, whatever it took, because that's what I was taught. That's what I was groomed to be, and that's what I wanted to do. And when I say anything, literally anything. And so I really empathized with the lieutenant, because I know if I was in that situation, I probably would have done the same maybe, okay? But when my friend asked me whether I'd be a good Marine now that I have converted to the Catholic Church or reverted back to the Catholic Church, and he said, if I were ported back, having a strong Catholic faith, would I have been a better Marine? I think he kind of suspected I would say no, because I would have done anything to win, all right? But as a Catholic, we kind of limit ourselves, right? We think of morality as a limit, right? As something that limits us to win. And so I said to him, I looked him in the eye and I said, no, I think I would have been a better Marine now that I'm converted to the Catholic Church. And he was surprised, and I never gave him the answer. But my deep down feeling answer was, the reason why I said I would be a better Marine was because I remember reflecting on this My Lai massacre and saying, I would have had the moral backbone to not do this, to go to the captain and say, I refuse to follow your order. I am not going to shoot innocent men, women, and children in my sector, in my area of operation. And if you want to court-martial me, go ahead. You want to shoot me on the spot right now for disobedience? Go ahead. Because I would have had the moral backbone to say, no, I am not doing this. This is morally wrong. And I would have been the one that reported it, not the helicopter pilots, okay? And unless he shot me on the spot, I would have stopped it in its tracks. Because the moral backbone tells us this is wrong. It loses every aspect of what the meaning of being in the Marine Corps is all about. We are to defend, and we save lives. Yes, we kill if necessary. That's what being a Marine is all about. So, yes, having a moral compass, being a Catholic or being a Christian with a moral compass makes you a better soldier, makes you a better Marine, makes you a better airman and sailor. This is something important to understand because, again, the moral compass helps us and guides us in our direction and our purpose. So it's really, really important. So let's go to the real topic, okay? Today's topic, we only have 4 more days until the presidential election and 5 more days and we'll know who the next president is. And people always ask me, are you, worried, nervous or whatever? And, it's like anything else. I'm kind of a little bit, I would love to have a crystal ball and say who would be the president by Wednesday, hopefully, God willing. But to say that I'm overly anxious, no. At the end of the day, we have to trust in God, and He knows what He's doing, right? So a deep trust and love of God. I haven't watched any of the debates, because I kind of know who I'm voting for, right? So here is what we're trying to do: is I'm trying to help you decide, what is the best presidential candidate. There's so many conflicts. I had a lot of conflicts. I mean, both of them have really good, approaches to the issues that are happening here in America, which, 2020 is a year of forgetfulness, I hope, because I can't wait until we're almost done. Let's see what 2021 brings, right? But before I start with this topic, I do want to give a disclaimer, okay? My podcast is called Practical Catholic, so there's a lot of sound Catholic teaching as well as sound Catholic, ideas and, prudential judgments here. But the disclaimer that I want to put out there is this, okay? The Catholic Church has insisted that we should never look at issues based on whether it's a Republican or Democrat, okay, or even independent, right? So the thing about it is we should never put our Republican hat on or our Democrat hat on. It's very, very important because no party is absolutely perfect, okay? There isn't, okay? And not only that, but we should really be looking at individual candidates and what their platform and what their push is, because you could see some Republicans good or bad, and there are some Democrats that are good or bad. So we should never be saying, "Oh, I'm a Republican, so I'm going to vote all Republican," and I'm a Democrat, and I'm going to vote all Democrat. You should be able to cross that aisle and vote on both sides. It's important to understand that. So the Catholic Church says, don't look at your party, okay? All right? To look at the issues and look at those issues and see who is the best candidate based off those, the issues, right? So I wanted to, that's really important to understand that. But let's talk about what's going on with this presidential election, okay? Now, a lot of times I tell you that, I'm Asian, right? So there's a lot of concerns that I have in America, what's going on. And I'll list a couple of things, right? So first of all is what a deep concern for me is racism, right? Racism is very high. I've told you in the past podcast about racist remarks that I've had when I was growing up and how it impacted me, when they were calling me chink and Jap and everything else, and in 5th grade. And I told you about that, right? And I would never want my children who, they look Asian, to go through that. And, we have faced, my wife and I have faced as a interracial marriage, some form of racism. I remember, my wife, who is Caucasian, she's German. She would take our kids grocery shopping, and our kids look Asian. And the first thing they would say to her was, "Oh, are those kids adopted?" And my wife would say, "No." And then they would look at her and say, "Well, how can that be?" Like as if to say, "Well, maybe my husband is Asian and they have my husband's traits," right? So the other day, a lot of Caucasians were catcalling, not catcalling, but basically telling one of my daughters, "Are you a Wang?" Like as if her name should be ending with, a Wang. "Oh, I recognize you because I thought you were my, this things." And my daughter's like, "What are you talking about?" Right? The other day, a priest even asked my daughter if she was adopted. Okay. because she was there with my mother. She was getting scrutinized for the confirmation, and they looked at the name, and she looked at my daughter, and she looked at my wife, who happens to be Caucasian. My daughter looked very Asian, and she said, "Oh, are you adopted?" Okay, so there's a lot of racism going on. I have other Asians in my businesses. I've had African Americans in my business. So racism is a pretty hot topic for me, right? Second is I have elderly members, okay, and I want to protect. Okay, so COVID is a big issue for me. Okay, I want to make sure that COVID doesn't hit my father, especially my father. I don't, not to pick on him, but he has a lot of sicknesses. He's probably the most susceptible, and I have a deep love for my father. So COVID is a big issue. You look at the environment. I mean, half of California is burning down right now. Every time I open up anything that deals with the news, it's always California or somewhere in the West Coast that's burning down, right? And as a Franciscan, we have a deep devotion to nature, right? And then look at our economy, right? I own a couple of businesses, and you look at it and say, one of my business is seriously impacted by the COVID and what's going on, and all the closes of the businesses and stuff. So you look at it and say, is 2020 really, when is it going to end? Are we even better under in the past 4 years, right? So you kind of look at that. You look at immigration. Immigration for me is very important because, hey, I'm an immigrant. Though I was adopted, I'm an immigrant. I'm still an immigrant, and I run a business that utilizes immigrants. I use a lot of Chinese as well as Indian programmers and developers and everything. So it does impact. And I could tell you right now, a lot of them are very much scared, right? So, there's a lot of immigration issues that come along. I don't want to, stop people from immigrating from the United States, right? I don't like all the violence and the police brutality, okay? Most of it seems to be coming from the cities, and they are. I mean, I just read that Philadelphia is going through a lot of things, right? So there, all these cities having police brutality and everything. So why aren't these leaders in these cities doing anything about it, right? But then on the other hand, I think we do need to open up, because it will open up the economy. So how do you balance that, right? I do believe that we should be regulating immigration in some sense where, we want to make sure that they're legal immigrants. I do support less regulation and free market in the economy. We shouldn't be, regulated because the free market allows us to progress and grow and allow us to grow economically. I do believe in law and order. I think that the police, though they need to be better trained or something happen, they do need to be supported. I do empathize in the level of stress and the level of danger that they're in. Okay, I can't tolerate the cancel culture. Okay, I'm a big supporter of second chances and failures which allow us to grow. If people can't make a mistake, the cancel culture reminds me of the zero tolerance mentality the Marine Corps had back in the 90s when I was in. Back in the 90s, President Clinton had downsized the military so greatly that they were like, you made one little mistake and they kicked you out because they didn't even need you. So when we had that zero tolerance mentality, the morale went down. What else went down? The productivity went down. Everything went down because everyone was afraid of doing anything because they were afraid of being kicked out. So it's this cancel culture is creating a zero tolerance for any mistakes. And the problem is we learn from mistakes. If a person said something about, them being painted black or whatever, you know what? Okay, they made a mistake. What was that, 20 years ago? Okay. If it was just recent, oh yeah, I could see that. But if it was 20 years ago, people change in 20 years. People learn in 20 years. People grow in 20 years. So this cancel culture is really just a weaponized, a way of manipulating people. That's basically what it has become. Okay, and it's not tolerated. It shouldn't be tolerated. We should be more tolerant in that aspect of it. I don't like the rewriting of history and tiptoeing with the English language. Hey, you know what? I'm Asian, but I hate to say this, but white people created this nation. And if I were going to go and live in China, and the educational system says the Chinese people made the Chinese government, they did. That's real history. Okay, I don't need to hide from history. Okay, this is one of the things that I really, really, really appreciate about the Japanese culture. The Japanese culture have great, they have a great monument to Hiroshima to make them recognize that what they did in World War II was wrong. Okay, the reason why we have monuments on, in Germany and Poland and Auschwitz is so that we can learn. Okay. All right. Not only that, but you might say, well, some of the statues we're destroying or whatever is they owned slaves. That was the culture of the day. Okay, that was the culture of the day. All right. They're not saying that these people supported it or whatever, but that was the culture of the day. And the Catholic Church even says that. We can't judge people from 20th century's ideological view back 200 years ago, 100 years ago, thousands of years ago. Because the culture is different. No different than I can judge a culture of, some other country as long as it's a reasonable, culture. But the point I'm saying is it's hindsight's always 20/20. We can always think that we're better than the people, that lived behind us. But we would not be here if it weren't for the progress of the past. That's why we progress, right? Because there were some failures in the past. Okay, so understand that not every person in the past, okay, was perfect, but there were some people with their imperfections who were trying to make lives better. Yes, did some of our great leaders have slaves? Yeah, that happened. So that's what happens. Okay, so we do have to understand that the past, okay, does have imperfections, and I can venture to say 200 years from now, they're going to judge. Those people are going to judge us on our imperfections. Okay, I don't like, I don't like the fact that President Trump was voted as president because the past presidents have failed. Okay, think about that. We have President Trump because the past presidents have failed us. Okay, a close relative of mine said, he feels like we're back in the 1960s. And I said, yeah, I do feel like we're in the 1960s. So I feel like all these 60 years of politicians have done absolutely nothing. Why? Because career politicians do absolutely nothing. Zero. Okay? That's what they don't do. So they had 60 years, okay, to work on us to get us better. The problem is leadership, okay? And leadership that's been there way too long isn't the best leadership, I can tell you that. So with all these concerns kind of conflicting with each other, how do I vote? What is the, what's the criteria of voting? So, I always do what they call a zoom out point, okay? And one of the great things that the zoom out point here is the fact that, as Catholics, we don't vote by our based off of our emotions and passions. I've always said that. You don't do that. You have to be, objective, and you got to use your intellect and will to make good decisions and actions. I've said that, right? In the past couple of episodes, we talk about, voices in our head, and we talk about using the intellect and reason and will, not our emotions, not our affiliations with some party or whatever it is. So how do we use our intellect and will to make a good decision? Well, first we have to make an objective and prioritized criteria, okay? We have to create a criteria, okay? A lot of people don't know what the criteria is. And a lot of times we don't prioritize that criteria. It's ironic because you know what sin is? Sin is what they call inordinate. Inordinate means out of order, okay? So in the election, a lot of people actually, look at the issues out of order. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're in order. The criterias are in the order, right? So, and the economy is not the top priority. I could tell you that in this objective criteria. Okay, the economy isn't. So the objective. So it has to be objective, right? We can't be subjective. Hey, I'm affiliated with the Democrats or the Republicans or something like that. Or I'm a company owner that deals with oil, so I have some special interest, right? So we want to create an objective and prioritized criteria, okay, that puts things in a prioritized or ordered things, because not everything is important. They're not all equal. The issues are not all equal to each other. So that's the zooming out part, right? We as Catholics, we cannot run from voting. We have to vote. Okay? There is an absolutely moral obligation for us to vote. And we have to understand that there's no perfect candidate out there. No one is single-handedly perfect. But what we can do is we can create an objective criteria, follow the issues, and see where they fit, okay, in that objective criteria, and then say, that's the best candidate that I can select and vote for, okay? So what is the zoom in main point? So what we're going to do is, in today's episode, we're going to try to create this objective prioritized criteria set by our Catholic faith, reason, and our needs, okay? Notice our needs is the last thing, okay? Our special interest is the last thing that we want to do. So we want to base it off of good, sound moral teaching, good reason, and as well as our needs, all right? So we have to make sure that they are prioritized, meaning there's an order to what is important and what isn't, okay? So that what we can do is we can eliminate that whole emotional feelings and everything else, and do that. So it's important to understand that that's what we do. So let's begin. So what is the current problem of today's state? Okay. The current problem of today's state is that I think a lot of people vote or select a candidate based off of, honestly, their emotions and their feelings. I heard one woman, I think in Trump's little town hall thing, one woman said, "Oh, I like your smile. You look so handsome in your smile." Who cares if he has a good smile or not? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if his face looks orange or if he looks green, right? We have to look at the meat and potatoes of what the issues are and base it off of a certain criteria. It could be off of emotions. Maybe you're a Republican. You can't tolerate a Democrat. That is not the way to vote, right? Or you're a Democrat and you don't like Republicans. That is unreasonable. Okay, unreasonable. All right. So you got to be very, very objective. So a lot of times we vote over because it's emotional, it's feelings based, it's an allegiance to a party, or in a lot of cases, it's a special interest. It's something that resonates with you. I know I'm for the environment, so everything is wrapped around the environment. Or I belong to the police union, so I'm gonna vote for whoever it is that supports the police. And yet that is not how we should vote. Okay. All right. Or I'm a business owner and I like X, Y, and Z because he supports the business. So those are important topics and those are important issues. But we have to create a prioritized list, a list that will show us how to do it. Okay? So that's really important to do. So that we're not voting illogically, and also in a way that is inordinate outside of the order. So how do we do this? Let's create this list, okay? This priority list, okay? So you can break it down, this criteria, objectively in two main categories, okay? The first category to create this priority list is we have to first, the highest level of issues that we have to categorize is what we call sound moral laws. The president that most effectively, helps promote sound moral laws. okay? My example of my story, okay, showed that once you break sound moral laws, okay, the whole unit, unit collapses, okay? It loses any purpose. So a nation that deviates from sound moral laws will be destroyed, okay, and lose all purpose and meaning, and eventually we become self-destructive, okay? You got to look at it and say, why are there a lot of anarchy or a lot of violence going on in the cities? Well, the cities actually have a lot of abortion in there, okay? So what are the sound moral laws that we have to worry about? There's issues of abortion, right? Euthanasia, right? There's life issues like abortion, euthanasia, executions in prisons, all right? There's also the next one is another one is traditional marriage. That's another sound moral law that we have to be aware of, okay? The second is sexual identity, okay? We're boys are boys and girls are girls. That's what they are. And so those are sound moral laws that we have to make sure that that the president that we select, okay, follow those sound moral laws. And I'm going to go into that a deeper dive because there's also a prioritization within these sound moral laws that we have to worry about, okay? But let's just talk about that group. Sound moral laws is the highest. It is. Why? Because we can't disagree in these laws. We can't, okay? There is a right and a wrong answer in sound moral laws, okay? So the president who supports as much sound moral laws, okay, will be the one who will have the highest, is the better candidate, okay? So we have to understand that, right? So the next criteria is what we would call prudential laws and policies, okay? Why is that second to moral laws? Because moral laws are right or wrong, right? There is a right or wrong answer. Prudential laws and policies, there is no right or wrong answer, believe it or not, because it's prudential. It's what I think is what's important, or whatever the leader is important, okay? And things can be implemented differently. This is where a lot of people get in trouble, right? In a family, right? You can have a family that might even be good Catholics, might be really good, but the prudential implementation of our family, husbands and wives might disagree, okay? Maybe we care about whether a child is sick or not. So one parent emphasizes vitamins and eating healthy, while the other one, but devalues exercising, right? I'm just using that as an example. While the other one values exercising and doesn't mind if they go to McDonald's or, they go to some other place, right? Junk food or something like that. That's a prudential judgment, right? They both care about, the health of their children, but one emphasizes exercising and the other one emphasizes better eating habits, okay? So again, very prudential laws and policies. There's no right or wrong answer, okay? We agree, but how we get it implemented, we might disagree, right? So for example, but within the prudential laws and policies, there's also gradations. So the first one is social justice matters, right? Why is that the highest in this prudential laws? Because social justice matters deals with things like feeding the poor, having medical care for people who can't provide it for themselves. Okay, they might have workers' comp or something like that might be there, right? So those are important because they impact. I would say the underprivileged or under people who can't provide for themselves, okay? And then last on the prudential laws and policies is what we would call best for society, not just for individuals, right? And that's things like the economy, even the defense, okay? The road system, right? Those things are in society is just to kind of benefit society and those types of things, right? So we have to understand that that's important. That the order is moral laws. Okay, that's the highest priority. The second thing is prudential laws that that could be right or wrong. That aren't right or wrong, but it's just different ways of implementing, different emphasis, just like the analogy of the family, right? And then within there, we also have to understand that there's an impact. Is the impact of these decisions large or small? And how realistic are they going to happen? I've seen a lot of things out there where they're all hypothetical, okay? Well, I could do this. I could do that. Well, we don't know if you can do that or you can't do that, okay? So it could be hypothetical. Or, we have to know what is the clear and present danger in that matter, okay? So let's look at sound moral laws, okay? Because there's also a priority within each one of these, categories, right? So let's look at the sound moral law. Okay, so there's I told you there was so far right now 3 of them. Right, there's the protection of life, innocent life, that is, and then traditional marriage, and then the sexual identity. Now, the life issue has the paramount. You call it trump in the card. And even within the life issues, okay, it's abortion, all right? And why? Why does the abortion issue have the highest priority of all and the highest criteria of all? Well, mainly because even if you were to take traditional marriage, okay, and sexual identity, at least no one's dying, all right? No one's getting killed over that, okay? They're just sins. And even St. Thomas Aquinas said you can't legislate all sin. Okay, it's not possible, because if you do, then it would become an oppressive country. Like, look at the Sharia laws in Islamic countries; they're very oppressive, right? So we can't make Sharia laws here in America either. But so yes, do I disagree with traditional marriage? Yes, I do. I'm sorry. Do I agree with traditional marriage and everything else? Yes, I do. But we can't always make the perfect situation, especially here in America, right? So, but the life issues are the most important, because the life issues isn't just a moral issue. It's an inalienable rights issue. It's actually, if you read the preamble to, or if you read the excerpts of the Declaration of Independence, it says here, let me read it to you. It says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness." Think about that. This is the reason why we declared our independence from England. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, the unalienable rights, right? Because it only makes common sense. You can't have liberty if you don't have life. You can't pursue for happiness if you don't have life. Life is the cornerstone of all of our rights and justices. Pope John Paul II said that if a nation that has the best care and medicine and support and helps all the poor in the world, if it allows abortion, then it's a nation of elitism. Elitism, that's what it is. It's an elitist attitude, because only a select few are allowed to have these benefits, right? Only a few are allowed to have the benefits of Medicare. All right? The unwanted who are aborted cannot have that Medicare, cannot have the rights of social welfare or the right of liberty and the pursuit of happiness. So it becomes a pretty much an elitist attitude, okay? If you look at also the abortion rate, okay, 1/3 of all abortions in America are African American. Yet African Americans make a very minor population in America. If you look at the roots of abortion, okay, here in America, it comes from racist people, okay? Margaret Sanger, all right? So you want to end racism and abortion, because abortion is racist. It really is. It kills people of other colors, of low income. You know, it is more elitist and racist than any person that I know of. Okay? All right? If you look at nations that have fell apart, okay, they all instituted, okay, abortion. Okay? Look at China. China had a one-child policy. They abort. Okay? They contracept. You look at Hitler. What was the first thing he instituted? He instituted the abortion. Okay? Eugenics. These were all there. All right? So we have to understand that a nation that devalues life, all right, is a nation that's racist, elitist, and really have no moral compass. You know? It only makes sense that we are now opening up the door to euthanasia, because the children that survived abortion have very little regard for life. So why not just do it at the end of life? Okay? And I always tell people, what comes around goes around. Okay? So the parents who allowed abortion to occur are now going to be euthanized when they get older. That's what's going to happen. You know? It's basically moral irony, okay? So that's what it is. So that's why life issue is so important. The other issue, the reason why life issues are important is because abortion, we have close to about 900,000 abortions a year, okay? No other moral issue impacts, okay, in a clear and present danger than abortion. A clear and present danger. Okay, all right. So that's really what we're focusing on, is that it's clear. You know, it's happening. You know, every day. Okay, every day in the United States, I forget what it is. I think it's like 3,000 abortions a day. Okay, 3,000 children getting killed every day. All right. You know, they asked Mother Teresa, why isn't there a cure for AIDS? And she said, because we aborted the child. Well, we can say the same thing. Why don't we have a cure for COVID, right? Because we aborted the child, okay? So you look at it that way. Let's look at prison executions, okay? Why isn't prison executions important? Well, just first of all, it's, you know, there's a difference between innocent life and guilty life, okay? Prison execution, we're talking really about innocent life. But even if we were to protect prison execution, which I agree with, I've done 5 years of prison ministry, and I do not agree with executions. But that really isn't a big issue. Why? Because in 2019, okay, just last year, only 22 executions occurred, okay? As opposed to almost 900,000 children killed, okay? And death row, if you were to do all the death rows of all the states, there's only 2,620, okay? So even if they were all executed, we're talking 2,620 out of 900,000. Let me ask you a question. Would you rather have $2,600 or would you rather have $900,000? Huh? Let's put that into perspective. Would you want more, close to $1 million worth of money, or only $3,000 worth of money? All right? That's what we're talking about in impact. Far greater impact, okay? So, you know, so the issue of abortion is so great because, one, they're inalienable rights. It's not just a moral issue. It's an issue with our Constitution, okay? It's our Constitution. It's an issue with the impact. We're talking about nearly 900,000 children being killed every year versus prison execution, 22. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to say, what would you rather save, okay? So we have to look at it from that perspective, okay? That the prioritization is there. The second is clear and present danger. Abortion is a clear and present danger. It's happening right now. It's not hypothetical, okay? Even if you took something like traditional marriage, and we can say, oh my goodness, that's going to go all over the place. Well, we don't know that, okay? We really don't, all right? So we have to be ready and understanding that life issue is the most paramount, okay? Then, as we go down to the prudential laws and policies, that's what the next checklist, it is social welfare. It is, Medicare for all. But they're prudential, okay? You might have a presidential candidate that says, medical care is, important, but I'd rather leave it up to the option of the people and the states. There's a lot of state programs rather than handling it at the federal level, okay? That's the big thing, is rather than handling it at the state level, at the federal level, we're going to handle it at the state level, where the states provide it. Here in the state of Connecticut, there's a lot of medical programs here. So it's not that, that we don't want it. It's how are we going to provide that, okay? So economy is last on the list of criteria, believe it or not. So we shouldn't base our selection on the economy, believe it or not, because that's really last on the list, okay? On there. So highest priority is moral law, and between moral law and prudential law, the top is sound moral law. The second, within the moral law, it's the protection of innocent life, aka abortion, okay? Because abortion has the highest impact, okay? Now, if we said something like if only like 100 or 200 abortions occurred a year, then we could probably say it's not of an issue, okay? Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong in the sense that no abortion is the utopia. But when you legalize abortion, when you condone abortion, okay, that's the problem, okay? And the problem is 900,000, not 100. Not even 900. It's 900,000, okay, children being killed. So that is the most paramount, okay? And again, it goes back to my story. A nation that loses its morality will spiral out of control. I think all the violence that is occurring, all the anarchy that is occurring is because a nation who kills its babies, all right, has no moral backbone. No moral backbone to say this is right and this is wrong. And that's where we're at right now. Because where we're at right now is what is right is now wrong, and what is wrong is now right. Who would have ever heard of defunding the police? The police who protects our lives, who try to protect us, who try to create law and order so that people can be safe. Now they're saying get rid of them? Do you really think, that is a reasonable thing to do? Deep down inside, no. Okay? No, it isn't. And because of that, there's rioting going on. Okay? It only makes sense. And leaders are allowing these riots to occur. Okay? Why? Because a nation that has now said killing innocent children, which is wrong, is now right. Okay? Can now say defunding the police is now right, even though we know it's wrong. We need people to protect us. Okay? Because there are bad people. There are Hitlers of the world. There are people who are bad. Because sin is in the world. And people commit sin. All right? So, if we were to weigh these issues, okay, we would understand, okay, all we need to do now is find the presidential candidate that is, okay, for the most, is pro-life, in essence. Because that's the most paramount issue in this presidential election. It is. It's not about the economy. Okay? It's not even about COVID. It's not even about, all of these things were just side swipes to get us, thinking of something else than the central focus, which is abortion. That's what it is. And I even fell for it. My concern was about COVID and my business and everything. It just made us completely selfish until 3 weeks ago, I went down in Philadelphia and I went to a mass. I have a good friend of mine down there who celebrates the traditional Latin mass. And he had the greatest homily about, voting and who to vote for, and that the pro-life issue is the most paramount issue. And he sets it straight for me. And that's what I'm trying to do, is set it straight to say it is the pro-life issue. Don't be distracted. Okay? Don't be distracted like I was. All right? So, in conclusion, we need to choose a president or any politician in any position based off of objective and prioritized criteria, based on sound moral principles and prudential judgments, rather than our emotions, feelings, or special interests. Also on prudential laws and policies. The moral issue of life, specifically abortion issue, is the top issue because it is this that has a clear and present danger. We're killing people. We're killing children, okay? And has the most impact, almost 900,000 a year, a total of 6.12 million since Roe versus Wade, okay? And severity, okay? We're talking death here, all right? We're not talking just a simple sin, And contrary to both moral law, it's against the moral law, and also against the unalienable right to life that the Declaration of Independence talked about. No other moral issue has the impact as abortion. Prudential laws and policies are secondary with social justice issues such as racism, feeding the poor, immigration, unemployment, are higher than even economic policies, handling of the pandemic, and military, because prudential laws and policies can be different. There's a difference. Moral laws, we cannot be different. They're either right or wrong. Prudential judgments, we don't know what's right or wrong, okay? It's prudential, okay? Because there is no real right or wrong answer in prudential judgments when we do the implementations, okay? Disagreements can happen with prudential judgments, but no one can disagree on the moral issues because it destroys the backbone of a nation, which provides guidance, tranquility, purpose to a nation. Moral issues have a clear right or wrong answer. Based on this summary, there's a clear presidential candidate who has championed the pro-life movement, a presidential and vice presidential candidate who were the first president and vice president to speak at the March for Life, who has supported pro-life for greater than any other president in history. Okay? Saving life is the priority of this presidential candidate. Let's end it with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Lord Jesus, whatever this outcome of the presidential election, it is always your will. Let us accept that will, whoever it may be. But let us have the courage to vote for the pro-life presidential candidate who has supported the pro-life movement by example and action, and the most recent action of the Supreme Court Justice. As we pray, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Thanks for listening to me, David Cease, at Practical Catholic. Please share this podcast to others, especially if they have benefited you. Also, feel free to share any reflections or leave a comment on the podcast, Instagram and Facebook at Practical Catholic, or visit my webpage at practicalcatholic1, that is the number 1.com.
You're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom